About 18 and a half years ago, a group of us decided to do something we were told would not work. We decided that we wanted to create a church that was designed with unchurched people in mind, people who didn't really love church. And the reason was we had a hunch. We didn't do any research, but we had a hunch. There were a lot of people, especially in our city, who loved God but didn't love church. So we thought, what if we could create a church for people who were interested in or had some interest in or actually loved God but didn't love church? We think there would be a really big market share. So we decided to create a different kind of church. And as we discovered, we weren't the only ones who thought that. And so we grew really fast. And the reason we grew so fast is this principle right here. In fact, this was probably for some of you worth coming to church or watching online today. If you have the only hot dog stand in town, your hot dogs don't have to be that good. Okay, some of you, that was worth it. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like the greatest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, so we had the only church in our town, in our part of the city, that was designed with unchurched people in mind, which meant if you were sort of like the anti-church person, but you were spiritual, or kind of the anti-church, but you loved God, we were your only option for a long, long time. That's not the case anymore, fortunately. So we had a great deal of success. We were told it wouldn't work for several reasons. Number one, we were told that in the Southeast, everybody either went to church or claimed they went to church. So there weren't really any actually unchurched people. In the Southeast, people would lie. You know, you couldn't get somebody to say, well, I don't go to church, unless they had moved from the Northeast. Now, in the Northeast, it's the opposite. In the Northeast, you go to church and swear you don't. In the Southeast, you don't go and swear you do. So we were told this isn't going to work because nobody in the Southeast is going to go to a church for unchurched people because they're not unchurched. They go Christmas and Easter, and that's good enough for them. And if they are going to go, there are so many churches, and if they are going to go, they're going to go to their parents' church or their grandparents' church. So this is a foolish experiment. People have tried it before, which they had, and it's not going to work. But we were just dumb enough to try it, and God just, you know, it's just amazing. We built this big building that we're in right now in Alpharetta, and I remember walking in here as that we were, you know, framing it out, and we were running out of money, and I thought, look what we've done. We built this giant building. What if nobody comes? So you filled it up once, and you filled it up twice, and we built another auditorium. Then we started building other campuses, and it's just been fantastic, and it's just been so fun. And now we have churches in a whole bunch of different states. We've got churches in Dothan, Alabama. We got a church in California, out Red Rock in Colorado, Florida. We got them here in Georgia, obviously, Indiana, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Washington. Different sizes, doing different things. But all of these churches have one thing in common with us, and they are in their communities trying to figure out how do we engage unchurched people in the local church. So every once in a while, as you know, and this may get on your nerves, we survey you. You come in, there's a little card on your chair. You're like, I'm not doing that, you know. But the great thing about, you know, there's about half the people in the world that will take a survey if they have a good reason. The rest of you just kind of go along peer pressure. And so one of the questions that we've asked for, we've been doing this survey for about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years. One of the questions is this: during the 5 years prior to attending this church, and this church refers to any of our local churches in the Atlanta area, did you regularly attend church elsewhere? And consistently, and this is just so wonderful to me, consistently about 40% of the people who check no. So about 40% of the people who are attending one of our Atlanta area churches and some of our churches in other parts of the country would say, before I started attending this church, I didn't go to church. I was unchurched. I hadn't been a regular church attender in 5+ years. So we've been so, you know, so blessed in that way, and we've been so committed to this. And the reason we ask that question is, I don't want to accidentally create a church that's for church people, because we've worked so hard to create a church that's easy to invite unchurched people to. In fact, most of you are here, or are, you know, if you're watching but attend one of our Atlanta area campuses, you're here because somebody invited you. And the reason they invited you is because we've worked really, really hard to make it easy for them to invite you. And in fact, chances are you said, no, I don't go to church, or no, I don't, and no. And they kept saying, but it's different, but it's different, but it's different. And they tried to, you know, get you to come, and finally you came and you went, it's different. And for some of you, you know what happened? You remember this? You walked in and you're kind of nervous, and you know, it's like they look like normal people, but it doesn't look like a normal church. And then the music started. I hear this story all the time. I hear, Andy, as soon as the music started, I just became emotional, and I don't even know why. If I've heard this, Andy, I attended for 3 or 4 months, and I don't remember any messages. I just cried through the service the whole time. And it's because we have this stuff we put in the air here. Have I told you this? It's like that stuff in McDonald's French fries. You can't stop eating them. I'm just kidding. So the point is, we've worked. Now, we don't get it right every time, and we're so not perfect, but we've just worked so hard. And honestly, and the people who've been on this journey with me for a long time, my wife's sitting here today, she would tell you, my primary concern from day one and even to this day is not size. I knew we were going to be big, and it wasn't arrogance. I knew we were going to be big because, again, we were going after an untapped market share. People who don't have a problem with God but have a problem with church. And I knew there was a whole bunch of you out there. In fact, I was kind of one of them, and I'm a preacher's kid. So we worked so hard. So I knew we were going to be big, so that wasn't a concern. There were some years where money was tight, but that wasn't a concern. My primary concern ever has been that we would become a church that loses sight of this desire to create a church for unchurched people. My only concern was that somehow we would lose sight, that we would drift from that we would get some other, thing in mind, that we would become content, that we would just be big and we would just be happy and we'd have plenty of money and we would just do church and feel like we were doing a good job. And here's why. This is kind of a little church insider thing, which is of no interest to most of you, but just so you know, the gravitational pull of every church is to become a church for church people. That's the gravitational pull. That is the way that every church, no matter how we start, how they start, every church gravitates towards servicing people who already know the deal, already know where to park, already know where to stand, how to check their kids in. They know where their seat is. They know where their friends are. Hey, I've already heard that message once. Hey, you all become kind of sermon evaluators and you become critics, and I don't think the transition was too good. And we sung that song too many times. And then what happens is you start filtering that information to us, and the leadership gets like, oh, we got to keep the people happy because the people are unhappy. They'll leave and then the money will run out. And so we've never, ever given in to any of that. And my concern is that we never do. But the gravitational pull of this church, like every church, is toward insiders, not people who aren't here. And here's one of the reasons why. The people who aren't here aren't here. They never complain. They don't ever complain about the music, the volume, or anything else. So we never, there's no squeaky wheel because they're not squeaking because they don't know anything to squeak about, right? So consequently, it's common or it's natural for somebody in my position or a staff position to just cater to the people who are here. But you didn't come here because we catered to people who are already here. And we don't want to become a church that does that. And I don't think we necessarily are. But I thought it'd be fun to take a week to talk about it. And let me tell you why. So to summarize that whole kind of complicated, what in the world are you talking about, Andy? Here's sort of the summary statement. The love of Christ compels us, those of us who are church leaders and those of us who are creating these churches and those of us who volunteer and give and come together to make this whole thing work. The love of Christ compels us to urge people to be reconciled to God. That's it. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do. And we're trying to make sure that that's the thing that's out front in front of anything else we might do. So since we're between series and next week we're going to start something brand new, and because I love this passage, I just want to, for the last few minutes, I want to take that teaching and I want to give you 3 kind of bite-sized nuggets in terms of helping you understand why we do what we do, what we're doing, and how you fit in. Let's begin with what? It's simply this. This is what we do every time we come together as a group of churches. We create and operate churches designed to reconcile people to God. That's it. If anybody ever asks you, what's your church about? We're at church. It's all about reconciling people to God. That's it. We think that we have been given the responsibility or the task of reconciliation, and we don't just take it personally, we take it corporately. And so our entire church is about everything we can do to say to people, God has removed the barrier. God has removed the barrier. Be reconciled to God. So the way we say it is that we create churches that unchurched people will love to attend. That's our vision, to create churches unchurched people love to attend. And that's a pretty high standard, but let me tell you where it came from. People who were nothing like Jesus liked Jesus because Jesus liked people who were nothing like him. And if we are the body of Christ, if in fact we are the hands and feet of Christ, then we should like people who are nothing like Jesus, and people who are nothing like Jesus should like us when they are with us. So we've done everything we can and will continue to remove every single obstacle to a person understanding that God's number one request is be reconciled to me. This is why we say that our goal in terms of family ministry and all of our environments is to create what we call irresistible environments. We want to create environments that are so good that people will show up and say, I don't believe what you're teaching, but I'm going to come back next week because I enjoyed it. I'm not sure I believe all that stuff, but I think my kids will benefit from it. I don't think I want to get up and come back, but my kids keep waking me up and laying out their clothes the night before and saying, we got to go back, we got to go back. I've told you this before. I've warned so many people, especially when our kids were younger, and people would ask us about our church and, hey, we're thinking about visiting your church. And I would say, look, if you attend another church and you're going to visit our church, do not bring your children. I've said that so many times. They'd say, don't you have programs for children? I say, yes. And I know you're going to be offended by this. I've never been to your church. But our children's environments are so much better than your church's children environments, and I've never been to your church, that your kids are going to become completely discontent with your Sunday school deal or whatever you go to, and they're going to want to come back. So I would love for you to visit our church. Do not bring your kids. And they wouldn't listen, and they'd bring their kids, and they'd say, you know what, you're right. They came home with all this stuff, and somebody called them, somebody sent them a note, somebody signed them up for something, and now we have to come back. I said, I warned you. Basically, big church is just, something to do while your kids enjoy their environment, right? So this is why we spend the money we do. This is why it's lights, cameras, action. It's not just because we got so much money, we don't know what to do with it. We want to create irresistible environments so that people find it hard to stay away, so that at some point along the way they hear something and it's like, oh, I just wasn't ready before. So we create irresistible environments for children, students, and adults. That's what we do. And here's why. Because reconciled people reconcile people. So Paul said, he said, those who live should no longer live for themselves. Those who live should no longer live for themselves. Once you get it, you've got to turn around and hand it off to somebody else. So we reconcile. The reason we're doing this is because we have been given the task or the ministry or the job of reconciliation. So we come together as a group of churches to reconcile people to God. And besides that, if you're new to this or you're considering Christianity, you should know this. Did you know that following Jesus will actually make your life better? And it will make you better at life. In fact, you've heard me say, and you'll hear me say it, as long as I'm here. Even if you don't believe, just follow Jesus anyway. Most of the people that followed Jesus in the first century didn't believe. In fact, when Jesus died on the cross, nobody believed. There weren't any Christians. They all gave up faith and hope. Following Jesus will make your life better, and it will make you better at life. And along the way, you may come to believe that he is in fact the Son of God and that he died for your sins to reconcile you to God. So reconcile people. They reconcile people. That's why we're so committed to this. And you know how we do it? We've been doing it the same way for 18 and a half years. It's three simple things: through leading, funding, and inviting. Leading, funding, and inviting. Leading, funding, and inviting. This is why we're so adamant about getting you involved, because we want to help you and put you in a place where you can lead kids and lead middle schoolers and lead high schoolers and lead teams and lead people and guide people and direct people, and to make this the best experience possible. We want Sunday to be the best hour or hour and a half of people's lives. We want them to walk away and say, again, I don't get it all. I'm not sure I believe it all, but those people believe. And I believe they actually care about me. And it's why it's so important that we become percentage givers. It's why I ask you all the time to come up with a plan to support your local church. I appreciate the guilt offerings. I really do. The guilt offering, here comes that stupid bucket. Hold on. Okay, do you have any change? Okay, got a Target gift card. We'll put that in there. Whatever it is. But let me just tell you, okay, to be honest, we don't live and die by guilt offerings. The reason we've been able to do what we've done is because a group of people, a nucleus of people, a remnant of people have become tithers and percentage givers like my family who love the local church, are so grateful for the local church. Why wouldn't someone have a plan? Why wouldn't somebody have a strategy for supporting an organization or a group of organizations that are so committed to the thing that has changed your life? It's through funding and it's through inviting. We call it invest in inviting. Invest in a relationship, invite them to church. Invest in a relationship, inviting to church. Truth is, about 70% of you, 65 to 70% of you are here because somebody invited you. That's what our surveys tell us. About 60 to 70% of you are here because somebody had the nerve to invite you to church and you said, no, I'm not that. And finally they talked you into it and you went, my kids want to come back. I think I'll bring them. And here you are, and now you're involved. And for some of you, you'd say it's the best thing that ever happened to you. So for us to continue to resist the gravitational pull to become just a church for church people, leading, funding, inviting, leading, funding, inviting, leading, funding, inviting. As you've heard us say, we don't babysit. Are you kidding? We set an anchor in the souls of kids from which they'll never recover and they won't be able to drift but so far. This is how we've done it. This is how we'll continue to do it. Now, here's the thing, and I'll wrap up. This, obviously I'm passionate about this. Here's the thing that I don't know how to impart to you, because you'd almost have to live in my world to fully get this. The best part of all of this is that it's not even about us. It's not about us adults. It's not about finally I found a church that's interesting, and finally I found a church that lets us out on time, and finally I found a church that, keeps me awake. Oh, goody, goody. It's not about that. Let me tell you what it's really about. Let me say it this way. We have 3 kids. Andrew and Garrett are in college. Allie's our senior in high school. And about, a month ago, we had our My Life weekend. That's this big giant thing for thousands of high school kids. And she went and she came home, and she leads a transit group on Sunday morning. And so I gave her a pass. I said, you're going to be up late Friday night. You're going to be doing stuff all day Saturday. You're going to be up late Saturday night. So Sunday morning, just sleep in. Don't do your transit group. Just call them and tell you. She said, no. So she comes in looking like, she's been up all night. Changes, comes to church, leads her transit group because she loves those girls, come home, she's just worn out and sick, and it dawned on me. She's done. That's her last event at our church as a child. She was Wombaland, Upstreet, middle school, high school, and now she'll go to Inside Out Sunday nights, but as far as events, she's done, because when she graduates in a couple of months, she's done. So all 3 of my kids are done with this thing that we do so well. And I got so emotional. And I got to tell you, if I can get through it. As a parent, not as the preacher, as a parent, Sandra and I are thoroughly satisfied customers of this church. I'm telling you, we are so grateful to God, and we are so grateful to you for creating environments. I'm telling you, it's not the preaching. In fact, it's not only not the preaching, it's not the preaching, okay? When you're the preacher's kid, it is really not the preaching, okay? And I grew up as a preacher's kid and loved my dad, but I'm telling you, as a preacher's kid, you see church differently. As a preacher's kid, you see the smallest shred of hypocrisy. As a preacher's kid, you see every little bit of hype. Don't you just feel the Spirit of God here tonight? And the preacher's kids are going, no, the room is full. That's what you feel, okay? So, we get it, I'm telling you. And the fact that my children love the local church, and the fact that, to my knowledge, we never had to make them go on Sunday morning. In fact, they would come even when we were taking the Sunday off and sleeping in. I'm telling you, I can't say enough. It's not about us. I'm telling you, it is about a next generation of kids who are going to grow up loving the local church. I was getting my hair cut the other day. There's a lady there named Danielle. She's a mom. She said, Andy, I have a bone to pick with you. I said, okay, what's going on? She said, we need to step out here on the porch. I'm like, uh-oh, am I the good witch or the bad witch, Very serious. She says, I got to tell you. She says, I'm a little upset about this. My son came home the other day and he told me that he's a senior in high school, that he's only going to apply to colleges in the Atlanta area. I said, why? She said, well, he's been leading this middle school group, and he wants to be their leader in high school. So he wants to go to a school in Atlanta so he can stay engaged with his middle school kids, small group, so he can be their leader all the way through high school. And then she broke out, with a big smile and said, thank you. I said, wow. The other day, it's almost a year ago now. Getting out of the car somewhere. Lady gets out of the car across the parking lot. We make eye contact. She starts crying. I thought, why didn't this happen in high school? And so, she's getting a Kleenex out. I'm sorry, Andy. I'm sorry, you're Andy. I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay. I have this effect. I said, what? Follows me everywhere I go. I said, here's what she said. She goes, I'm sorry. She goes, she said, I've been meaning to write you. I've sat down to write you, and I thought you don't get your mail, and you probably don't get your email, but she said, I just feel like this is like a divine encounter. I said, what? She said, my son just walked away from God and walked away from our church some years ago. Now he's come back, and he told me he's trying to get things right with God, and I thought to myself, oh no, I can't take him to our church. She said, now, this is how people talk to me, so don't take this seriously. She said, so I brought him to your church. I know it's not my church, but that's how people say your church. I brought him to your church. And she said, and he's been coming, and I just can't thank you enough. She's crying. I said, well, can I ask you a question? I said, I'm just curious, what made you think, I've always asked this question, what made you think you could bring your son to our church? She said, I have friends that go there, and I just know yours is the kind of church where he would feel welcomed and accepted. I thought, good, because that's what we've been trying to do for 18 and a half years. We have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to leave the local church in better shape than we found it. We have an opportunity to launch a generation of kids who think you're supposed to enjoy church. Shh. We have the opportunity to raise a group of kids that think you're supposed to serve and be in a small group and invite people. Now, don't mess that up by telling them that's not really how it's supposed to be. But the reason they think that and the reason they feel that is because of your generosity and because of your service. And because so far, so good, the love of Christ compels us. It always has. By God's grace and by your continuing to invest, hopefully, it always will. For the love of Christ compels us. For the love of Christ compels us. Be reconciled to God. So thank you. Let me pray for you.